Merkel Media.
What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Look, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Dave on NBC.
Jack Marius Tack-Theratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him.
Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Muammar Gaddafi.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swangles and Fort Lauderdale?
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the Sears hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard.
I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. If you're watching us on Rockfin, Odyssey, Band.video, Vigilante.tv, or you're listening wherever podcasts are served, thank you so much. We appreciate the support. If you like this show, please take the additional step of rating it on the podcast player. It means a lot to the algorithms. We'll take it. We need all the help we can get, and it certainly does help the show. Also, listen, thank you to our sponsors that make the whole thing work. Legal Shield has been in business for half a century in Canada, in the United States, and they are going to get you access to attorneys for a very reasonable price. How reasonable? $1 a day. $30 a month will get you in the door at Legal Shield, and you can get access to an attorney that has on average 22 years of experience. They're going to help you out with a variety of things. If you've got speeding tickets, red light camera tickets, all that nonsense, send it to your attorney. If you have paperwork that you need to get done, legal documents that you really need, last will and testament, financial power of attorney, medical power of attorney, you don't want to spend the thousands of dollars it's going to cost to go to a traditional law firm and pay for these documents, but you got to have them. You absolutely need them. So you can set it up so you can just talk to the people over at Legal Shield, knock that out in your first month. My God, it'll pay itself off for the next 10 years. So take a look, go to the website that they created specifically for this show. www.don'tgetpushedaround.com is the place to go. You can find out all sorts of information about the Legal Shield plans. You can add on a la carte items to that. If you're somebody that is a gun carrier, there's documentation for that. If you run a small business, they have a small business legal plan. A lot going on over there. Best thing to do, just go over, check it out, see if it's right for you. Don'tgetpushedaround.com. Also, thanks to the folks over at EMP Shield. They will, listen, we don't like to think about the idea of EMP striking, so let's just do this. Let's say it's lightning, okay? Lightning strikes. This will cover you for lightning, solar flares, EMPs. That'll work on your home. It'll work on your car. It'll work on your motorhome or boat or generator or whatever you've got. You can get a bundle package. You get a couple of these devices and bring the price down. It's many times more efficient than a single-use military design. It can handle up to 40 EMP strikes. It's fitted to a household circuit breaker with just 4 wires. They install it like a Type 2 surge protector, and you can even do it yourself. There's installation videos on EMP Shield's website, and you can find them online as well. So go to the website, take a look, read up about it, see what you think. EMPshield.com is the place to go. If you find something that you like, use the promo code MACRO, and it will definitely save you a bunch of money. Well, without further ado, let's get into it with David Icke. Welcome back to the show, David Icke. Good to see you again. How are you?
I'm good. Battling on.
I have bad news for you. I just got back from the American Liberty Awards, and you and I are both nominated in the book category, and we lost. We lost to Alex Jones, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, whatever.
Oh, I'm devastated.
I know. I can see. I can see it in your face. It was just fun to go and check all that out. So I'll tell you, it's been a wild couple of weeks here in the States. We've had well, it's been a hot summer. We've had a lot of weather related issues. And now what has jumped onto the radar recently has been the devastating fires in Maui. I was just there just a couple months ago. Maui's my favorite place on earth. I have it in my will that my ashes are to be scattered off the coast of Lahaina. I'm not kidding. This is one of my favorite places in the world. I've been going there my entire life. I spent my 50th birthday specifically there. To me, it breaks my heart to see this. I am willing to accept a certain level of coincidence, and that's fine. And I fully understand that we're only less than a week out from this and we don't have all of the information. But I'll tell you what, they're making it very difficult for me to not put my tinfoil hat on when I look at a lot of the things that are happening here. But regardless of that, regardless of whether this is something that was natural, intentional, there is clearly an agenda to use the weather as the method of transforming society, because it's a very, listen, it's a great concept. It's the weather. We can't change. We can't do anything about the weather, except that we've been modifying it for 60 years. Forget about that. But theoretically, right, it's just nature. We can't blame nature. It's like a virus, right, that comes out of nowhere and is going to kill everyone. Another invisible killer, right, that's being used to transform society, remove our rights, take away our liberties, and then give them back to us in the form of something very different. And fears about climate terrorism, because we see this agenda playing out. Obviously, it's not just Maui. Canada, Greece, all over the place. Things are happening this summer. I remember summer. I've lived through plenty of summers. Now we're all boiling to death, according to the media. So, what is your take on this?
We haven't been. No, it's been a terrible summer, especially July. Just rain and wind, and it's rainy and windy here today. So it's been happening in Europe, but it's not been happening here.
Well, according to the news, though, they changed the colors of the maps to show it. It used to just be green. The color, the temperatures are behind you, and it used to be kind of green or maybe darkish green. Or now it's bright red and purple. It's very scary, David. We're all going to die. I feel like we're all going to spontaneously combust. They want us to have anxiety about the weather. They want us to be fearful, and they want us to outsource that solution to them. I get a very problem reaction solution feeling from this. Am I wrong about that, or what?
Yeah, well, I came up with a line, the phrase "the problem reaction solution" a long time ago. But there's also another version of that which I was talking about a long time ago, which is no problem reaction solution, and that's when you don't need a real problem, you need the perception of one, because people will respond from their perceptions. That's what the whole of this global conspiracy is about. It's about hijacking perception and thus dictating behavior, which comes from perception. So you can have a real problem, and the perception is there's a real problem. Or you can have a manufactured problem, a hoax that's not really a problem. But if the perception of the population is that there is a problem, well, there's no difference to whether there is or there isn't, because you perceive it, so you believe it, so you behave in the way that relates to your perception, your manipulated perception. And human-caused climate change is a no-problem reaction solution. They are manufactured it. They do it in many and various ways. They have technology now which can manipulate the weather in a very, very advanced way. You rightly say they've been doing it for decades and decades, but it's got more and more sophisticated, especially the manipulation of the jet stream, for instance. So if you manipulate the jet stream, which basically brings the weather from the west into Britain and Europe, then you are going to change the weather in Europe. And we've had a summer in Europe where it's been hot. They talk about record temperatures, but then you say, okay, so where did you take this record temperature? Do you know last year we had the record temperature in Britain? Oh my God! It was the highest temperature ever in Britain. And they put the sensor next to the runway at RAF Coningsby while jets were taking off, pouring fire out of the back of the engines. Yeah. And it was a certain temperature, and then suddenly, for a very short time, just a matter of really seconds, it went up. Record temperature, oh my God, and then came down again. I wonder what was happening on the runway when that was going on. And you see, I've been following this for decades now, this whole story. And again, you come up with images of these temperature sensors next to, heat vents and stuff. And so it's manipulated. And the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, an expression of the UN, which is a massive global vehicle to impose this global tyranny, as more and more people are seeing as we move along. And so you've got the UN with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change telling us how bad it is and telling us what the problem is. And the same UN is pushing for Agenda 2030, etc., which is telling us what the solution to the problem must be. So the whole thing's coming through the UN, which is a massively controlled organization. Indeed, was created by this, what I call global cult in the first place, not least through people like the Rockefellers. And so the idea is to give you the impression that humans are to blame. This is an anti-human agenda, and humans are to blame for rising temperatures. Their problem was when they came up with global warming, which was just after they were claiming we're going into a period of global cooling. Their problem was the temperatures didn't go up and up and up as they predicted. And so they came up with climate change as opposed to global warming. Is to sell and trying to sell it anymore because more and more of the public are beginning to suss it's a hoax, but they're doing it anyway. They're just pushing on and pushing on. They have a in which they have to impose this digital concentration camp based on we're all going to die CO2, carbon dioxide, which is the gas of life. And if we don't, then that's it. That's the end. And as the climate has not played ball with the narrative, then they have a problem. They have a problem because they're trying to sell something that's not happening. So what do? You give the impression it's happening. You give the perception it's happening. So, for instance, all the way through my life, I was born in 1952, years after years after years after years, we've had the Met Office, the weather office in Britain, and BBC weather people and all that. And they have said, oh, there's a storm, and it might be a bit big storm. And that's it, all the way through my life. Now, in the last 2-3 years, they've started giving any storm that's beyond, what you'd expect every day, a name. So now it's storm this or storm that. And as you rightly say, there are memes which have put together a weather forecast, a BBC weather forecast from some years ago, with higher temperatures than they have now on the meme, and yet the higher temperatures have a background of green. Britain is green, Europe is green. Now, with lower temperatures than that, everywhere is red. Now, this is sexual manipulation. And so given the fact that you can manipulate the weather with technology, given the fact that you can manipulate the data to make it sound as if it's true when it's not. Oh, this is happening, it's climate change. Oh, it's hot, it's climate change. Oh, it's cold, it's climate change. And therefore, you can play the public perception to believe, large numbers of people still do, of course, especially the wokers, that we are heading for some climate Armageddon. And so the easiest thing that you can do to give that impression is start fires. Yeah. We've had the climate minister in charge of the climate policy, and not a conspiracy theorist, quote, who has come out and said that the great overwhelming majority of fires in Greece recently were caused by human hand. It's the easiest thing in the world. And, a lot of people will kind of reel back and think, well, no one would do that. Look at the devastation. Look at the death of people, or the potential death of people. But we're dealing with, and this is what I've been trying to get across all these years, we're dealing with psychopaths that are on a scale, it's almost beyond the imagination. The top two traits of a psychopath, according to the official definition, is no empathy and no compassion. And if you don't have empathy, the ability to put yourself in the feelings of those you affect, then you have no limitations. Empathy is the fail-safe mechanism of human behavior. And if you don't have it, there are no limits to what you will do. And so when I look at what has happened with the so-called weather extremes, and when you look back at the data, you find that all the extremes of weather, of wildfires, they're claiming it's always more than ever before. It's actually not. It's a lot less than it was a long time ago. You can see across the spectrum of all these events and all these claims that there is an agenda to make it seem as if the climate change narrative is true when it's not. And so whenever of course, wildfires will break out because of the circumstances in the area. They always have. But when you get these weather events and these wildfires on the scale that they've been, at a time when they are desperately trying to sell this policy to transform human society on the back of it, then we have to question everything. We don't have to take what we're told is the situation. Well, of course, Maui and climate change is all over the media. That's what's caused it. No evidence. We have to question everything, because if we buy this nonsense that they're springing on us and are springing on the kids in the schools from the earliest age, then dystopia will be justified.
Yeah. Well, speaking of those memes, the weatherman memes with the lower temperatures with or higher temperatures with a green background as opposed to lower temperatures that they've now colored in red.
Yeah.
I think it's a really excellent way to show somebody that's unfamiliar with this information, or maybe is a little skeptical that, thinks that we're making a big deal out of nothing. My question to them would be, this is a visual representation of them manipulating you. It's obvious, it's undeniable. They have changed the colors in order to make you feel a certain way. So my question to the normie people out there would be, if this is so real, why are they feeling the need to manipulate it? If it's really happening, it would be authentic. They could show you, but instead they're having to manipulate you in order to make you feel like there is a problem. So therefore, my question is to the people out there, don't you get a little bit suspicious when somebody's trying to manipulate you to feel a certain way?
Well, what you just described is what happened with COVID.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. If you have a real virus that's killing people all over the world, then why do you have to test for it with a test that's not testing for it, which is what the creator of the PCR test, Kerry Mullis, said it can't tell if you're sick. So why are they using a test to test if you're sick when the creator said it can't do that? Because every time you test positive with a test not testing for the virus, you call it a case. And that's where your data comes from for all the cases. And then for the first time in human history, you bring in a law or a way of doing things that if you die of any other cause within 28 days of a test not testing for the virus, then COVID-19 goes on your death certificate, which gives you the death numbers. Now, if you have a real virus going around doing all this damage to people, then you don't have to do that. You don't have to use a drug called midazolam, as the British, to kill vast numbers of old people in care homes in the spring of 2020 and call it the first wave of COVID. Because COVID will give you a first wave, if it existed, as they claim, without any use of midazolam, which is an end-of-life drug, which is used by some American states in the execution process. You don't have to use remdesivir, as instigated by Anthony Fauci, to treat people who've tested positive, test not testing for it. The remdesivir drug was known, provable fact, before to destroy organs, to create multiple organ failure, especially the kidneys. And the kidneys stopped processing fluid. Fluid builds up in the abdominal cavity. People start struggling to breathe, and it goes on the death certificate. Now, you don't need any of that. And you don't need human-caused climate change to be real. You just have to call everything that is climatic, that is in any way extreme or mildly extreme, you have to call it human-caused climate change. It's exactly the same scam. And both of those hoaxes are designed to the same end because the same people are behind them. You had Bill Gates in February 2021 taking time away from selling the fake vaccine with all its deadly consequences since to promote a new book of his saying climate change is going to the world and we have to take all these measures and instigate all these policies of control and dystopia to save ourselves. It's the same people to the same end. And what is that end? Over the decades, I've described what the goal is. And I've, since the Hunger Games Society or the Hunger Games movies came out, I've called it the Hunger Games Society. And it's very simple structure. You imagine a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid, people, the inner core of this global cult, and they control, this is where it's going, food production, who has water and who doesn't, all the essentials for human survival, because it's an anti-human agenda, like energy, for instance. And at the bottom of the pyramid, you've got the mass of humanity who are in under the control of the few through dependency. If you can get anyone dependent upon you, you control them. The idea is to create a situation in which the mass of the global population are under a dependency for survival on the few that control the means of survival. And in between the two is meant to be a police military state, a fusion of the two ultimately, to impose the will of the few on the many and to stop the many rebelling against the few. Now, that is a structure I've been talking about for decades, that this is where it was going. And now look at what's happening. And you think, well, how do you then, okay, you can have your military police state, but there's still billions of people. And ultimately, and you know, potentially they could rebel in numbers that would be unstoppable. we still can for the moment. So how do you do it? Well, you do it through AI. You make sure that you have a digital currency, which I was been predicting in my book since 1992, in a book called The Robots' Rebellion. And you make it programmable, which is what they're talking about quite openly now. And a programmable digital currency means that whoever programs it can dictate what it's used for. So if you want to buy a book about exposing the conspiracy, well, under this dystopia, you won't be able to buy it because your money won't buy it because it's programmed not to buy it. And then you say, okay, well, I'll pay cash. Well, the idea, of course, is that cash disappears. And it's disappearing at an extraordinarily fast rate now for this very reason. You also have a carbon limit, so that once there are credit cards now that are circulating, which are saying that once you reach a certain carbon limit in, say, a month, and you have bought things that have been said to produce this much carbon, then you can't buy them anymore. You can't use the card anymore until you go on to another carbon sequence. And so through the hoax of human-caused climate change, this is why all these things are going on and getting faster. You might note that if you look at what was predicted and what's doing the predicting, computer models, and computer models out of places like the Imperial College in London, who produced the computer models for COVID that justified lockdown.
Right.
If you look at the computer models, and that's dead simple to manipulate. You put rubbish in, you're going to get rubbish out the other end. It's very easy to manipulate, and that's where it's coming from. But even if you look at them, what is they claim is happening now in terms of the speed of climate change is far, far quicker ever even the computer models predicted. So why is that happening? It's happening because they're desperate to sell this, because as they're doing it, and as these kind of, quote, weather events unfold, they're desperately trying to get these this digital concentration camp into position. And once they have, they know there's pretty much no going back. So what they're doing, for instance, in places like Oxford in England, but it's happening all over, is they are creating these isolated communities where you can only drive out of them a couple of times a month or something, whatever it is. And the idea is that eventually you won't be able to drive out of them at all. And so you're looking at a concentration camp. Now, if you drive through the limit of your community, your climate change community, then at the moment, then what you can do is say, well, I'm not paying the fine. And mass people don't pay the fine. Okay, so what are you going to do about that? Well, that's the point of the digital currency, and that's the point of making everything digital and everything connected to everything else through AI, in that just as in China now, which is the blueprint for the global society, you'll be fined by the time you get to the end of the street. It'll be taken from your bank account. Yep. You won't have the ability to say, no, I'm not paying it, because it will be taken anyway. And this is where we're going. And the foundation of it, the foundation scam that's justifying it, is human-caused climate change, which is why everyone needs to question everything in relation to that when they're telling us it's climate change, it's climate change, it's climate change.
I remember hearing about Shenzhen in China several years ago. An example of a guy saying that if you get on a bus, you're smoking a cigarette, you're not supposed to smoke a cigarette on the bus, camera tracks you, the facial recognition, back to the command center, figures out who you are. They said that by the time that guy gets off the bus, walks around the corner, he gets a ping on his cell phone that they identified him, they listed what he'd done, they fined him, they deducted it out of his Weibo account, and it was all sorted out within less than 10 minutes. And that was several years ago. So
yeah, well, what's happening is, for many and various ways, they are selling the idea that we must have cameras everywhere. I'll give you a wonderful example. First of all, the Chinese cities are just awash with cameras. They're everywhere. Facial recognition cameras, all the whole shebang. And so we've got a mayor in London, sinister man called Sadiq Khan, a Labour Party mayor of London. And he's been pushing this thing called ULEZ, the ultra low emissions zone. And what it means is that if you come into London with a vehicle that is not in accordance with the low emissions policy, then you have to pay £12.50 a day for entering that zone. And that includes if you live in that zone and use your car. So it's been in central London for a while, and now at the end of this month, there's a massive campaign against it in this country, and one man's pushing it on behalf of those in the shadows.
Yeah.
And now at the end of this month, they're going to extend it to the whole of Greater London, and it's going to be financially devastating for enormous numbers of people. But then you look at it from just another angle. What does this involve? It involves cameras all over the place to police the ultra low emission zone. So therefore, in many and various ways, that's just one, but an important one in London. And they want to introduce the same policy around the country. They're justifying putting cameras galore up. And now those cameras are not only going to be used for the ultra low emission zone. They're going to be used to police the public, and they'll be turned into facial recognition. You've got these cameras that are number plate recognition. Well, facial recognition is the next stage. And what it means is you're looking at China. Now, it's been my contention for a long time, and now decades, that if you want to see what's planned for the West tomorrow, increasingly it's not tomorrow, then look at China today. And what I've been saying is that the Mao revolution was actually a global cult revolution, this global network of secret societies that's behind all this in the end. And the reason for it was to incubate a system of mass control, not least using technology and AI, within an environment of communist China in which there was no debate. What the government said happened, and still does. So you can move very much quicker in China to bring in this dystopian system you want to play out globally than you could in the West. I say could because, of course, it's moving that way in here now too. But in the West, they had to pay lip service to freedom and democracy.
Yeah,
given up that now.
Yeah.
And therefore they could move slower. But as a result of, quote, COVID, which came out of China, they claim, bang, look how much more like China the West has become since 2020. And if people want to see what's planned, very simple, look at China and you'll see what's planned. And then some, because they've not finished with their dystopia yet either. They're still playing it out and making it more and more sophisticated. When you look at what has happened in relation to China, it's no accident, it's by design. What you've done, because the idea, and again, I've been saying this for so long, is to move the power center, the global power, from the West to the East. That's the idea. And a alliance of Russia and China and India and so on, Iran thrown in. And what you've seen is the systematic movement of power from West to East. So you have the corporations, the so-called Western corporations, that have been moving production into China and the East for decades now. And they've given China control over vast tracts of the supply system. I mean, where do the antibiotics used in America really come from? They come ultimately from China.
Percent of them come from China.
Yeah, where does the fentanyl come from? American society comes from China via the drug cartels across the border. So, and then you've got things like TikTok. Any company that is will be under control to some extent, and if it's in China itself, completely by the Chinese Communist Party government. And so you look at you look at TikTok as it plays out in the West, and then you look at TikTok in China as a very different entity, because what they're doing is dismantling. This is why the border is open. This is why the borders are open basically into Europe, certainly more and more into Britain as well, across the channel. Could be stopped. It's not being so. Because the idea has always been to change the demographic of the West. So Western culture followed the Christian religion. But if you look historically, the Christian religion is weaved into Western society, not least in Britain and Europe. And if you want to dismantle Western society, you start pulling Christianity out of it, and it starts to change. It has to change because there's such a fundamental Christian historical basis to Western society. And so you can say what you like about Christianity, no problem with political correctness, but say anything about any other religion, and it's hell to pay. And then you look at the attacks on white people, the racist attacks on white people. Why is that? Because if you want to dismantle Western society, then first of all, you want to target the prime, in terms of numbers, racial group in that society. If the prime racial Western society was black, or they'd be going for them.
Yeah.
But it's white. And if you can dismantle and change that power dynamic in terms of numbers and influence, then you're changing Western society. You're bringing people in who will come from another culture and will want to express that culture in their Western country, whatever it is, as they are. And therefore, you're changing Western culture. What you then do through politics is you make sure that it is cancelable if you say this is what is happening. But you can say what you like about white people, as with Christianity, because they're the target. So why would we want political correctness in place to protect white people? We want them to we want their demise in terms of what's happened before. And so you wherever you look, you can pick up a piece, you can pick up a dot, and you can put it into the other dots, because it's all happening at the same time and they're all interconnected.
Well, with regard to China, you can get away with doing things very differently there. Top-down authoritarian, the state can say this is the direction we're going. In the West, it's a little different. They still would love that, but culturally, they have to do it a different way. So it feels like they do it bottom up in the West. They soften up the minds of the people. They've instilled this sense of guilt in a lot of people that has been crippling. It's climate guilt. Whatever it is, whatever, you have to feel bad about being you. And once you convince
an anti-human agenda, now is the attack on making people feel guilt for things they didn't do, by the way.
Right.
And if you believe in reincarnation, then our slavery actually had a previous incarnation I mean, it gets really complicated when you get into and anything but black and white.
Life.
Reincarnation, yeah. I mean, but the fact is that people who are alive today should not be paying reparations for things they didn't do to people who didn't have it done to.
In states like California that didn't have slaves, and they're trying to normalize it and pay. I mean, if I didn't know any better, I think there was
attack on white people, because white people are the prime racial group in the West, and they want to dismantle the West. That's so. It's that simple. Mate, it's just the way we have to do it. You know.
Yeah. You're wearing the wrong colored spacesuit these days, so we're just gonna have to take you down a peg. But that works really well into their, this push to disconnect us from our soul, to disconnect us from any sort of sense of pride. If you can get people to hate themselves, they're not going to put up much of a fight. When you impose this authoritarian state, they're not going to feel that they deserve to be free. They're going to feel like they're getting exactly what they deserve for the crime of being who they actually are. And you've got a new book.
And part of that is to dismantle pride in a country.
Yeah.
Because individual countries are a bulwark, but they want global dystopia. And part of that dystopia is to dismantle countries. AI and the cloud, which is gathering in its extent. And so what you want to do, and another thing, of course, is the idea is that the world will not be run by politicians elected, useless as they are, most by technocrats, by bureaucrats, by engineers, by experts in various fields. And so what you would need to do is to discredit, while you're going along your road to utopia, you need to discredit the political system to the point where people go perception again, where people go, well, I don't know, the politicians won't be any worse if it's a technocracy. At least the experts will be in control. Yeah, just like they were in COVID. Yeah, and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Bloody idiots. Is there a check in the post? Yeah, okay, I'll say what you want then. And so you have this situation in America. It is absolutely no accident whatsoever that you have a senile president. They want you to see that he's senile. They want you to see that the vice president makes the word moron irrelevant in terms of describing her. They want you to see that. They want morons in government, as we saw again and again all around the world during COVID, because they want to discredit the whole political system in the minds of the masses, so that they are, again, you use the word, they're being softened up to replace politicians altogether. And so, again, it's all perception. And this is where the game is being played. And what we need to do is to stay in control, or take back control, in the case of most people, perception. So it's your perception and not one you've taken off the peg from government or some other authority, where you question things, where you don't accept that authority is telling you what is true, or that it's a benign force. It's not. The best way of dealing with authority is, or in all its forms, is to take what it says by definition as a lie. Then two things happen. You start to, first of all, that point means you're not going to accept it, and you're not going to behave as a result of accepting it. You're saying, it's a lie. I'm going to start out that way. Now, then you do some research, and on the odd occasion, and it will be the odd occasion, you'll find that actually they were telling you the truth there. Okay, fine. then I can react to that. Now I'm convinced that it's actually true. But most of the time, it will turn out not to be true. And you will have saved yourself being pulled in by the lie. The second question is, okay, they're lying. Why are they lying? To what end are they lying? And that answer, again and again, vast overwhelming majority of times will be because if I believe the lie, they can justify advancing an agenda for total global control and dystopia and more control over the fine detail of people's lives. And if people just ask those questions and start out, not, are they lying? Start out, they're lying. History tells us they're lying. So now we're going to check if they are lying, but I'm not responding until I've checked it out.
They haven't earned the right to be trusted off the bat. You not. Start with distrust automatically. But you mentioned an interesting thing there. You talked about perception management. It's all about perception management, right? Yeah. If you can change the way somebody views themselves, the external world, then you've got them. You've got them in a sort of box. You've got a new book coming out, The Dream. This is about the nature of reality. Perception management. Can we talk a little bit about this book? Because this one is I think it's going to take people places that might make them uncomfortable, but they're going to need to get really honest with what we're dealing with here.
Well, there's stuff in this book that's never been written before. And concepts in this book have never been written before. Because I've always worked on the principle that was quoted by Socrates, the ancient Greek philosopher. And it's words to the effect of, wisdom is knowing how little we know. Now, what I've done is I've gone along on this journey of now coming up 34 years, is not just look at the here and now, but look at where the here and now is coming from. And so you start out, as I did in the early 90s, looking at the way the world is directly controlled, and you realize it's not by the people that appear to be running it. Then you think, well, okay, so when did this start? And you start going back, and you go back, and you go back, and you go back. You're into the Roman Empire, you're into Babylon, the ancient world. And then you say, well, there must be, therefore, a unifying force, a coordinating force that spans this period. Because people have been born, particularly into certain families, they have played a part in advancing this dystopia. And then they've died, other people have come in and they've taken it on. So there has to be a coordinating force that's coordinated this journey. And what has been the journey? To centralization of global power. We've gone from tribes to nations to groups of nations like the European Union, centrally controlled. And the next stage is just to go into world government, in which they will dictate to every community in the world, not least via AI. And then you think, well, where is this ultimately coming from? And then you, as I started to do in the 1990s, you realize that these are satanic ritual. They're literally sacrificing people, not these children, to their gods, just as they did in the ancient world. And what you see when you research this is the gods that they were sacrificing people to in the ancient world are the same gods these lunatics today in the global cult, some of the most famous people in the world, are sacrificing people and children to. So then you say, well, who are these bloody gods then? And then you start to realize that ultimately what I call the global cult is a network of secret societies that is answerable ultimately and is a vehicle for entities not in this world. And when I say not in this world, that's not saying a lot, because the world that we perceive to be the human world is such a narrow band of frequency. It's pathetic. And anything outside that band of frequency, we can't see. And I began to realize a long time ago now that actually this reality, this human reality, is being manipulated via this global cult from another dimension of reality, which is on one level where it meets this one is very, very close in frequency terms, but not close enough for us to see it in the normal course of events. And then you start to say, okay, so, but how are they doing it? How are they controlling the world as we experience it? And then a question that you so rarely hear in the mass of the population, when you'd think it would be the first one they ask. What is this world? What is it? What is this place? Yeah. And then you go down that road. And I, just after the turn of the millennium, I had this overwhelming feeling. This is a simulation. It's the equivalent of a virtual reality computer game. And what you find as you move along is that this technological world that's emerging now is simply mirroring the reality that we're experiencing. In fact, if you put the headset on and you're fed information through the headset, you see people thrashing around in an empty room as if something's going on because the headset's telling them as it is, then all the headset's doing and all these other things like the gloves gives you the touch sense and the audio give you the hearing sense, is they're hacking into the five senses through which humans decode reality. It's a hacking job. That's what it is. And it's a hacking job because it's a technological representation in the way it works, controls perception of the actual overall simulation that we're part of. And I said just after the turn of the millennium that I felt that the limit of the simulation at this level, because it goes to other levels, which is really go into that in the dream, and puts reincarnation into a totally different light. At this level, I said the limit is the speed of light. And the speed of light appears to be, to some people it's not, the fastest speed possible, because it's the fastest speed of the simulation at this level. And then in April 2021, there was an article in Scientific American where an academic said that he believed that we live in a simulation and that the limit of the simulation is the speed of light. And obviously, I took very great interest in that. And he said something else, which I absolutely think is spot on. What I've been saying over the years since, when I first got this is a simulation, is that what we call the laws of physics are actually the encoded laws of the simulation.
Right.
This is why when people, near-death experiences, etc., they tell their stories, they describe a very different reality, a very different law of physics, if you like, once they're out of the body, because they've left this band of frequency we call the human world, and we're locked into it through the body, which is basically a biological headset, decoding reality, decoding the simulation to give us the impression that we are living in a world that we're not. That's how deep this rabbit hole goes in terms of perceptual manipulation. And so he was pointing out that you can encode the simulation with your rules and regulations, laws of physics, but you're still going to be limited by what he called your processing speed. And he related the processing speed limit of this simulation level to the speed of light. And so what I produced a book called The Trap last year, and I've gone on down this rabbit hole more and more and more, in the knowledge that there's always more to know. And so in the dream, I'm looking at how this whole interaction between this other level of reality, still in the simulation, what people call the astral or the fourth dimension, which is another level of the simulation, and how it's manipulating what we call the human world. And you realize that actually it's not that this world is partly a nonsense and partly manipulated and partly a hoax. You realize that it all is a hoax. It's all manipulation, all of it, because the idea is to stop you expanding your awareness out into those levels that can see it, that get it. You want your target population locked into the five senses, where the physical world is basically their only point of reference. And to do that, you have to hold their attention. You have to keep their attention on the five senses and the five sense decoded reality. You don't want their attention expanding out. Oh, so that's what's going on. Yeah. You want them in. And so all these things that go on, all the dramas, all the upheavals, and all the, oh my God, have you heard the latest? All these things are part of the attention holding drama to keep us in the prison cell of perceptional reality. And what I'm talking about in the dream is how it is a dream. This is an induced dream. When I was a journalist, a mainstream journalist on a newspaper back in Leicester, where I was born, I went through a period where I'd wake up in the morning and I'd put the radio on, the news show on the radio, and then maybe I'd just nod off for a bit more. This happened many, many times. And I'd go and have a dream. And every time I was in these circumstances in the morning that I woke up from the dream, the news story playing on the radio related to the dream I'd just been having. In other words, what was coming out of the radio was inducing what I was experiencing in a dream. It was an induced dream. If the radio hadn't been off, and I might have had another dream, but I was having a dream related to that story because that was what was playing to me. And what this reality is an induced dream. We're being fed a sense of reality which is simply not real. And this is why they have, we experience this reality as solid and physical, when quantum physics shows very clearly that it's not. It's an illusion. It's all an illusion, but it's a simulated illusion. And what they're terrified of, this demonic realm which operates from the lower levels of this astral, these are where the gods are that these lunatics have been sacrificing people to. They are terrified that humanity will wake up, not just to the fact that there's a manipulation going on in the world of the scene, but that the whole thing is a simulated manipulation. And if you don't believe in the dream anymore, the dream stops affecting you, because the dream is the dreamer and the dreamer is the dream. One's creating the other. And once you stop believing in the dream and you start to see the real reality that we're experiencing, then that dream stops affecting you in the same way. And as it stops affecting you, it allows you to move further and further out of the attention on the dream. My God, have you heard the latest? And see it for what it is. And as you expand your awareness out of that attention magnet, you start to see everything in a completely different light. And the whole thing unfolds, the pennies drop, and you see what you've actually been experiencing while you thought it was real.
I have to share with you a story, a life-changing story that happened to me this year at Acapulco. You and I met at 2019 at Acapulco. I went in 2020, took a couple years off. I came back this year, had a great week, ran into a good friend of mine, a friend that I had met at a previous in Acapulco during the days, the 5-MeO, different, a type of DMT trip that lasts maybe 40 minutes, but it's kind of mild.
Okay.
Ran across this guy again, and he said, would you, he's kind of my DMT partner, I guess. And he said, would you like to take it to the next level and try this and do the smokable kind, which is different than this? And I said, yeah, I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and you're the right person, and let's do this. And he said, all right, we'll set it up for Friday night. The whole event will be over. We can go to the beach. Nobody will be on the beach. It'll be nighttime. We'll bring some towels and we'll do this. So we set this whole thing up. We went down there and we went through this process, and he kind of helped me, guide me through it. And on the final session, he said to me, this time I want you to not lay back with your eyes closed. This time I want you to sit up, keep your eyes open, and tell me what you see. I said, fine. I did that. I sat there as it was coming on. I'm watching the waves. It's nighttime. The moon's out, but you could still see some stars. It was really beautiful. And I watched, as the waves were crashing, I watched the waves freeze. Just everything stopped. And I could see the world just like I had been seeing it. But I could see a very faint grid line, a grid pattern that extended throughout the beach, through the waves, throughout as far as I could see into the horizon. And when I looked up into the stars, it extended all the way across the sky. I felt like I could see the top part of a grid, of the way you would do some sort of graphic modeling on a computer, and the very first step would be to lay out a grid of a face and then add layers and layers and layers and I got that grid level, and I could see every star in the universe, it felt like, but the grid enclosed it all. And when I got done with that one, I looked at my friend and I said, I got the grid. He smiled. And I said, how can I go back to reality after this? And he said, now you know what you didn't know. The idea of a simulation, the idea of this being part of some sort of larger computer program sounds preposterous the first time somebody tells you that. But I'll tell you, after this experience, I felt like I saw the backbone of the universe. I felt like it was very computer generated like. And I said to him, I remember saying, those simulation theory guys, I think there might be something to this. I felt like I got a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, well, I go into that in great detail in The Dream. And there was a guy called Silas Bean, physicist, who led a team at the University of Bonn in Germany pursuing the question, is this a simulation? And they concluded it almost certainly was, and it was based on a grid pattern of cubes, a cube grid pattern. And what's been interesting since I had that, if you like, download, this is a simulation and the speed of light is the limit of this level, is that more and more in even mainstream science have come to the conclusion that this is actually a simulation, not least because once you realize it is and how it works, as I go into in The Dream, you can see how the so-called mysteries of life just fade away and become explainable. And there's one guy I remember called Rich Terrell, who was a computer guy at NASA, upper level computer guy, who concluded that this is a simulation and it's holographic in nature. Now, I've been talking about the fact that this world is holographic, not physical, way back. decades again. And he made the obvious conclusion, is pretty obvious, that if this is a simulation, then it's not natural, is it? It's been created. So who created it? And that's what I've been going on about all this time, about what is actually behind this in the end. And this is another point I would make too, which I go into in the dream. We perceive that something biological is natural. Why? Because we have nothing else to compare it with except the technological. So we see technology made of metal and what have you, and we see nature, and we think, well, that's natural and that's not. But I can tell you that this demonic realm that's behind all this, this is why the demonic is mentioned not just in every religion, it's mentioned in the cultural belief systems of all over the world, same thing. The demonic sees the biological as a form of technology. That's what it seems. It sees it as. And for me, the truly, if you like, natural exists beyond the simulation. Within the simulation, it's all simulated. And I do think that what I've picked up over the years is that this is a simulation, which is a copy, what the Gnostics used to call, or still call, I suppose, but certainly used to call in their writings, a bad copy of prime reality. So beyond the frequency band of the simulation, that's what it is, it's a band of frequency, which we are locked into, which is why we perceive it to be real. There is a prime reality that is a much more expansive, much more enlightened expression of what this is a copy of. It's like it is literally like a digital copy of something that basically exists, but it's a simulated copy of it. And what they've done is, since that simulated copy was made, and you can liken it to this, you've got a website and it's being created by someone. You then take a copy of the website, and now you've got the copy and you have control of it. What you copied from still exists and goes on its own way, like prime reality, but you now have a copy, and from that copy you can change the copy to fit what you want. Mm-hmm. And eventually it becomes very significantly different to what you actually copied and still exists. And so what's been happening through this period of this simulation is the simulation has been continually changed and changed and changed. And one of the things I go into in detail in the dream is that this simulation, this reality we call the world, is actually being controlled by AI now. But it's not AI of the type that we see, advanced as that appears to be. It's the Stone Age compared with what is possible. It's what I call astral AI. Astral AI is running the whole show. And, you know, people in the spiritual arena through the ages have basically said the same thing. If you want to reach a state of enlightenment, you've got to go beyond mind. You've got to get mind out of the way. So I looked at this and I thought, so what's the bloody mind then? What's this mind you have to get out of the way before you can reach a state of expanded enlightenment? And what I conclude in the dream is that it's actually AI. What we call the mind is AI. This I've been calling since the 1990s a biological computer. And the mind level operates through the computer, what we call mind. And so if you don't override this AI mind with consciousness beyond it, which we can do whenever we choose, if we really, want to really be free, then this AI program we call mind will dictate your life. And it seems to me, more and more obviously, that what this COVID fake jab is designed to do, it's designed to do many things, but this is a key one. It's to make it, shall we say, far more difficult for consciousness beyond the biological computer, what I call the AI mind, the astral AI mind, to be influenced. And it's interesting that if you look at what some people have said over the years, said that there is a vaccine that is planned at some point, which will disconnect humans from, quote, soul, automatons. And it seems to me that this COVID fake vaccine is having that effect. You'll have your own experiences, of course, but one of the things that I'm observing, and more people, unjabbed people mostly, are saying is people are not the same anymore. Family members, people at work are not the same anymore. And the word vacant keeps coming up often. They're like, they're not the same. I've got a brother who he repairs buses all over the place, on motorways and anywhere they break down. And so he's over the years met many people over and over and over again, and got to know them as people, as personalities, and the way they are. And he says again and again, since the jab, they're not the same people that he's known for years and years and years and years. And this is a common theme that's starting to emerge now.
It's listen, Harari at the World Economic Forum told us, free will, you don't need it. The soul, it's an outdated concept. They would love to strip us of that. They would love to take away our humanity. But I'll tell you what.
If you take away your consciousness, all that's left, in my conclusion of the dream, all that's left is the AI mind. And the AI mind is programmed with a behavioral program. And what I've found over the years when I've looked at the world and traveled the world is that we see all the things that we think are different between people. But actually, if you observe on another way, from another angle, the most fantastic thing is how much people are the same. Or they may have the cultural differences, ritualistic differences, but basically they're the same in the way that they live their lives and perceive the reality. Now, why is that? There should be 8 billion unique people, surely, but there's not. It's because of this AI mind is driving the perception of those that remain uninfluenced by consciousness.
As I live my life, the more I learn, the more I realize I know nothing. I have so much more to learn. David, where's the best place for people to pick up this book in advance of it being released?
Well, they get it from davidicke.com, and they're just arriving in the United States and North America. And so if you order them through davidicke.com, it's not going to be posted to you from Britain. It's going to come from within the United States. So you'll get it real quick. And it's out on the 1st of September.
Fantastic. That's David Icke, everybody. He's the dot connector. He's the most dangerous man in the world because he has ideas that are very different and what the establishment would like us to believe. Hey, if you like this episode, you can take the additional step right now of sharing it with your friends and family. If you want to connect with me, the website is theoctopusofglobalcontrol.com. You can follow me on Twitter @macroaggressions. Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you again soon.